Pancake block on the edge, sprung him. Around the end, Robinson shakes a tackle. Xavier Robinson headed to the pylon, dives, lost the ball. They signal touchdown. 18 yards at Oklahoma.
The ball, because it goes through the end zone. He's good right there. Right there, it's secure.
Howdy. Welcome back to College Football for the Busy. We had a big mix-up in the rankings for this last weekend of Week 13 of college football, and we've got some fraud alerts. Let's jump over to this tweet from Boxer Sports Media. Week 13 frauds exposed. Indiana, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and BYU. Who else has got caught lacking? I kind of feel like Colorado. I know Kansas has been doing well, but there wasn't Colorado just didn't do much against Kansas this last weekend. I hope that's not true, but their rankings definitely dropped appropriately for that loss. So here we go into the top 12 games from this last weekend. Number 12, Boise State versus Wyoming, and Boise State wins. Wake Forest versus Miami, and Miami definitely wins on that game. UTEP versus number 10, Tennessee. Very much blew out UTEP, showing that they are a top 12 team there. Honestly, just me personally, when Alabama beat Mercer, Alabama got a bump, probably better than Tennessee got a bump. That's just me being critical of the ranking system. Number 9, Ole Miss versus Florida. And we have our first fraud alert. Other top 12 teams have beat Florida. And so for Ole Miss to lose to Florida, not a good sign. UMiss versus Georgia. Georgia wins. That's good. Number 7, Alabama versus Oklahoma. And we have another fraud alert. Alabama just did not show up against Oklahoma today. And Oklahoma mostly just did a run game the whole time. And Alabama just could not stop them. I'm glad the Sooners got a victory over Alabama. But Alabama just didn't show up, and definitely they do not deserve this year a top 12 spot. Clearly, Nick Saban is showing how good of a coach he was by how poorly Alabama can do this year, even with their stacked roster that Nick Saban was winning with. Number 18, Army versus Notre Dame. Does the military school win? No, they do not. The Notre Dame keeps on trucking in the top 12, 49-14 win. Number 5, Indiana versus Ohio State. And, we're going to save that one. Number 4, Penn State versus Minnesota. And Penn State just barely squeaks out a win, but they do get the win, 26-25. Kentucky versus number 3, Texas. And Texas shows that they should be up there with a 31-14 victory over Kentucky. Number 5, Indiana versus Ohio State. For real this time. Number 2, Ohio State, sorry. And I think we have a fraud here too. Indiana loses quite poorly, whatever you want to say it, to Ohio State. And honestly, I watched most of this game. Ohio State just kept on trucking, and Indiana just didn't have anything really to say about it. And the score reflects that. So them getting bumped back and probably being fraud kind of makes sense. And then number Oregon, I was on a bye week, but they'll be back this week. So let's get that real quick. The top 25 rankings: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State all stay in the same spot. Notre Dame moves up 1, Georgia up 2, Tennessee up 3, Miami up 3, SMU number 4, Indiana bumps down 5, and that's your top 10. Boise State at 11 bumps up 1, Clemson ups 5, so now they're in the top 12. Alabama's at 13. They should honestly be like at 16 or something. They just are not doing well this year. Arizona State at 14 moves up 7 points. Ole Miss down 6, rightfully so. And honestly, though, I think Alabama is definitely doing worse than Ole Miss this year. South Carolina up 3, so they're moving on up. Iowa State up 5 at 17. Tulane up 2. Always love the green wave there. BYU down 5, just starting to flounder. And the Texas A&M Aggies down 5 as well. UNLV, they're up 2 at 21. Illinois up 2 at 22. And then Colorado down 7. Again, unfortunately, that was a sad loss for Colorado. Travis Hunter's probably should still be in the Heisman running and leading it. But unfortunately, his team getting into the top 12, not likely now. And then Missouri and Army rolling out the top 25. So if you're into the betting line, this is just a preview for you to see what that reflects. And honestly, the craziest pick you could. I mean, SMU is up there now. I think SMU would be a good pick. And Clemson is in the top 12. And Boise State. I think Boise State probably is a good pick. South Carolina, if you want a long shot, is moving up the rankings. But the rest of those, I don't see them happening at all. But if you wanted a long shot, South Carolina definitely might get in. And Boise State is just staying in there. And then Clemson now showed up. So you want your long shots there. Sorry if you wasted your money on Alabama and then not getting it this year. So here's our Week 14 top 12 preview. Forgot to change the text there. So we have 16 South Carolina versus Clemson, Oregon State versus number 11 Boise State, Purdue versus number 10 Indiana, California versus number 9 SMU, 8 Miami versus Syracuse, 7 Tennessee versus Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech versus number 6 Georgia, 5 Notre Dame versus USC, Maryland versus 4 Penn State, 3 Texas versus number 20 Texas A&M, Michigan versus number 2 Ohio State, Washington versus number 1 Oregon. And I forgot to change this text. Sorry about that. But we got the Week 14 6 to see, and we've got the big matchups. State schools against state schools here. So Georgia Tech versus Georgia. Again, most of these games, the underdog is going to want to win. Georgia Tech versus Georgia. South Carolina versus number 12 Clemson. South Carolina, they've been doing very well. They've been the giant killer this year. So are they going to beat Clemson and hopefully get into that top 12 spot? They're going to fight hard for it. Tennessee versus the very strong Vanderbilt this year has fallen in the rankings, but doesn't mean they're still not a team to worry about. Number 5, Notre Dame versus USC. Michigan versus number 2 Ohio State. And there's just a weird year in college sports that USC and Michigan are not ranked. It's wild. And then number 3 Texas A&M number 3 Texas versus number 20 Texas A&M. And we've been waiting a decade for this game to relaunch, so it'll be very exciting. A lot of emotions wrapped up into this game, and both teams are equally wanting to slaughter the other one. So a rivalry gets to be rekindled this coming weekend, so it'll be exciting to see how both of those teams and the stadium handles it. And Texas is walking in, as much as me as a Longhorn hates to say it, they are walking into the home of the 12th man in a rekindled rivalry after 10 years. So it's definitely Texas A&M is going to have a home field advantage, and but Texas is going to walk in there with every trick they have up their sleeve to defeat the Aggies. So definitely want to see that one. And we cherish the thoughts of armchair quarterbacks here. Please drop your comments below the big moments you thought. Do you have any frauds? Do you disagree with our frauds? Are you an Alabama lover through and through? And the next Monday, we'll be back at this again to see what happened after this coming weekend of big rivalries in the Big 12, the top 12 teams, and also the Big 12 if those happen too. Anyways, that's all we got for you, and see you next week.